you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it a lot. You're awesome, man. Just good to meet you too, and like reading about your story and all the videos you posted. You're a really awesome guy. Good to meet you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's fun to talk about the story of Meow Wolf, and it's fun to talk about the future of things. So I appreciate it. Nice break from my my quarantine. So thank you.
You've been stuck in quarantine. Where are you now?
Yeah, I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where I'm like born and raised, and also where Meow Wolf has its first location.
Right.
And yeah, so I live here, and yeah, I actually am getting over. I got COVID like 6 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, it took a couple weeks to get over, but I'm just kind of like still in this mindset of just laying low and enjoying this cold weather here from inside my apartment.
Yeah, right. It's been snowing over there, huh? It's been snowing over here too. We're in Colorado.
Oh, nice. Where are you in Colorado?
Denver. So yeah, like you're saying, you guys are moving. Meow Wolf's coming to Denver here soon. We're off of I-25 in Colorado, so like Glendale area.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I guess my first real question is like, what is Meow Wolf exactly? It's hard to explain to people. Like when I talk to people, I've been to the one in New Mexico, and it's just kind of a trip. So I mean, just to hear from you, how would you explain what is Meow Wolf?
Yeah, the Meow Wolf experience is an interactive, immersive, multimedia, psychedelic art experience, art exhibit. You know, we really take the concept of like a painting, and instead of walking up to a painting, it's like you're walking inside of a painting. And then we incorporate like storytelling elements. So it kind of feels like an immersive storytelling experience, a little bit like an escape room maybe, but it's more so just about like letting yourself dive into a completely alternate psychedelic realm. And we provide that space. And then it's totally up to you as to like how you want to experience it. You can be there for an hour, you can be there for 5 hours, you can sit on the couch and watch other people, you can play and jump around, you can climb on things. Like, so we try to present an environment that like is really trippy, visually stunning, and also like takes the person's mind into a whole different universe.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's how I would explain it too, is kind of like the acid trip without the acid, you know? It's just a trip.
Totally, man. And that's honestly like sort of at the core of what we're trying to do, you know? Like, I mean, when you think about like the psychedelic experience as being a transformative experience,
Very true.
You know, when people do psychedelics, whether it's for recreation or for therapy, you know, the whole point is like, I feel stuck in my own definitions, and I want to break out of my definitions. I want to be able to see a larger world. I want to be able to see more possibility. I want to get out of myself. And that's honestly what we want people to experience at Meow Wolf. We want people to go into Meow Wolf and like have this feeling while they're inside of an exhibit that like the world or the universe is more than what they thought it could be.
Right.
You know, and if they can think that's like a really transformative and powerful moment, because they can start to think of themselves as being more than what they thought that they could be. And that's powerful, because now you're stepping out of your own limitations and into your own possibilities, and it's transformative. And so like,
yeah,
it's very similar to, it's like we want to create a psychedelic experience without people having to take drugs, like for sure.
I like that a lot. And that it's kind of strange too how the world sort of puts you into that, you know, everyone has to be sort of similar, and it's monotonous, especially when you get into office life and stuff like that, and how all the houses on each block look exactly the same, you know? Like it's almost as if as you grow up, you're expected to be less creative and put yourself out there a little less. So did that sort of define how Meow Wolf is going to become and like the beginnings of it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we're all nonconformists,
right?
You know, we are all like rebellion. You know, we have a rebellious streak to us, subversive. We, you know, as artists and as like creatives, and when we were in our 20s, especially, kind of growing up, like it was right place, right time, because you know we started Meow Wolf right at the end of the George W. Bush era, right before Obama,
right?
And like, you know, millennials had yet to really like, you know, get a place in the public psyche. And so we were basically just saying like, fuck this world. We want to create our own new world. And so that's always been a big part of like where we're coming from with this. And yeah, you know, for whatever reason, like humanity has prescribed this way of life, you know, the way we dress, the language we speak, the way we design cities. There's a value system basically that has been constructed that's not really real. Like it's a bunch of social agreements that we've all, you know, decided to follow. And I think what Meow Wolf kind of wants to do, and art in general, like art as a whole thing, wants to like challenge the structures that we've come up with and ask ourselves, do we want to create new structures? Because we can. If we want to, we can.
Right.
You know?
And even the structures of art itself are changing drastically with this world. I mean, the big one that comes to my mind recently is the whole movie theaters and HBO Max and Warner Bros. Putting all their movies on HBO Max like that. Like, talk about the institutions of art changing drastically and what movies are going to look like. Like, how does that sort of play into your role? Like, how people are going to be working from their homes more so than they ever have before. Like, that's going to be changing a lot of what people experience on the day-to-day.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it changes, in my mind, it changes what people leave their house for. Mm-hmm. So if you don't leave your house for the movie, right, and you don't leave your house for work, and you don't leave your house to buy, you know, products anymore because you're ordering them on Amazon, what do you leave your house for?
Right.
And you know, I'd say that like a lot of us recognize nature as something that you leave your house for. You know, I think people will go and watch sports, but there's this big missing piece of like family attraction that I think is really important, and stuff that's not like cheesy, you know, like stuff that can like entertain a family, entertain kids, but be legit and be mind blowing, you know, and like we just have never really had that. We've never had that before. It's like I want to create stuff out in the real world that actually challenges video games, you know, that's actually as cool or cooler than video games to a 12-year-old. And like that's the challenge. That's what I want to like try to create in the world.
Well, not just that too, but like older people, like the video games and stuff, you know, like to younger people, how do you give that same sort of like mesmerizing to an older person, you know, that like video games isn't really their thing. Like you're giving a new experience to an older demographic as well, right?
It's totally right on. Yeah, totally. Like there's, you know, kids recognize that the significance of video games, you know, what's amazing about video games is you get to like immerse yourself into this world. Mm-hmm. And it's a fictitious fantasy world with all sorts of cool stuff going on. And you get to actually be the one with agency controlling a character and choosing how you experience it. And like adults, a lot of adults, well, people even older, especially like my parents' age, like boomer age, they've never played a video game, you know, or they've fallen out of video games, but they still have the potential to experience this, like, you know, this escape into a fictitious realm, this escape into an alternative reality. And they actually desire it. You know, we all desire it. And that's probably one of my favorite things about Meow Wolf is like, you'll see these like, you know, 50 or 60-year-old people standing in line, their arms are crossed, like they're not even happy to be there. They're like all frustrated. Their kids have taken them to this stupid place called Meow Wolf. And then they get inside of the exhibit and they just go crazy. Like they start crawling through spaces and their eyes light up and they're smiling and laughing. And like this grumpy 60-year-old, you know, dad or grandpa is now this like, is acting like a kid again, you know?
Right.
That is awesome. And it's like kids and adults can kind of connect on the same plane at a place like Meow Wolf, you know?
So what is it about life that you think that sort of muffles creativity? Because kids are, you know, their whole life, you know, they're so creative and they're around all these colors and everything. And then as you grow old, like what is it about growing old that muffles creativity?
Yeah, you know, like it's because we have to follow systems in order to survive. Right. You know, we start to have to follow systems of like, you know, of self-care and systems of, you know, operating in society, stopping at red lights and, you know, putting your turn signal on. And then we have to like operate within a system of, you know, 9-to-5 capitalism. And And it's all for a good reason. It's like, I'm not a hater on systems. I think systems are really important. It's all for the sake of actually creating more. Like, it's actually, humanity's on this trajectory of bringing stuff from our imagination and making it real and doing it at a ridiculous trajectory, like a ridiculous rate. And that's what the systems have done, is it's sort of like created this machinery that can process imagination and then make it exist in reality. But what it does is it kind of like squashes the imagination in the process. And so the way that I've always looked is like, the systems are good,
right?
But making sure that you leave room for spontaneity. The spontaneity is good, but make sure that you leave room for the system. It's like we all know the person in our life who's like way too spontaneous, and you're like, dude, get your shit together. Like, you need a system in your life that you can follow. And then we also know people who have no spontaneity and are too into the systems. You're like, dude, loosen up, like, have fun, And so like there's a balance there that I think is really important for us to maintain within our own psyche. Like, you need to be able to feel spontaneous and feel grounded at the same time as much as possible. That's kind of like, that's a peek into like my own personal madness, is trying to keep both of those things happening,
Yeah, it's hard. Well, let's go into that a little bit. What was your life like growing up? I know you said New Mexico. How was it? Did you go through a hard life? I mean, how would you describe that?
Yeah, I grew up with two parents that were both public school teachers. We grew up super poor. Like, I was like, kind of real lower income. It was like a big deal when we go out to eat at Pizza Hut, once a month, and be like, yes, Pizza Hut.
Like Vince got good grades this month, we get to go to Pizza Hut. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they're incredibly strong parents, and they are school teachers. So they provide a lot of structure. And I think that, like, for me, growing up in New Mexico is a funny place because it's like part of the United States, but then it kind of doesn't feel like it is. Like, it actually, we kind of in a lot of ways we kind of look at the United States as if we're sort of an observer of it.
Really?
Like, I remember watching MTV when I was like 12 and watching like MTV Spring Break. And it wasn't like I was watching anything that I was familiar with. It's like I was watching America from an objective perspective.
I feel like a lot of people who grew up in the Midwest can definitely relate to that. I know I grew up in Kansas, and so I definitely relate to that feeling.
Wait, so you didn't feel like you were part of America in Kansas?
No, not really. I mean, it's small town. I guess I felt like part of America if it would have been like the 1950s or the 40s, very old town, everything, old money, still hasn't moved, It felt like I was sort of in that lost time,
Yeah, it's kind of like, when it's like New York and LA and, maybe like Miami, like those really are the representations of America that you watch. And when you're from small town Kansas or you're from like small town New Mexico, you don't feel like you're part of that at all.
100%.
So I kind of grew up with like a very like a discerning mindset. I loved math, and I loved I was a big math guy, but then at the same time, I liked to be crazy and rebellious. I was like kind of the class clown, and kind of like I was always trying to like trick my teachers into. I was always trying to find like the back door of like how I could get good grades. I never wanted to just go the way that I was supposed to. I'd always wanted to like sneak around do some kind of scheming.
Right.
And that's funny. Like, that's totally my personality, is just somebody who's always trying to like think about a strategy as to how I can avoid the normative route.
Yeah, because it's like, why waste your time doing what everyone else is doing? Like, that doesn't look fun.
So when I was in high school, I didn't go to class. I would go to the teacher on the first day of school, and I would negotiate with them at how I could get a passing grade without having to show up. And then like, and that kind of just resulted in like I didn't apply for college. I didn't go to college. I stuck around Santa Fe in my 20s, and I threw parties. I had like, basically threw raves at my house, or I threw raves outdoors, and was really all about like social scene.
Right.
But was broke. And so then I fell into shoplifting, and I became like a kind of addicted. I became kind of addicted to shoplifting.
Yeah.
Small things, like mostly small things. And then it got worse and worse, and I got caught a couple times. And the second time I got caught, I totally gave it up. And like that was 8 years ago, and I haven't shoplifted in the last 8 years. And I like went through a proper like 12-step program for like Shoplifters Anonymous, and like
wow,
it was real. And yeah, and it was good because it was like I had to get that piece of my psychology in check, because I was so about like walking into a Target and being like, how can I like outsmart Target today?
Right.
You know, that was like in my mind. And it was just like so unhealthy, and so it undervalued me, you know. And so like now, as I've been able to turn into more like entrepreneurial spirit, turn into this Meow Wolf thing and other businesses, and I can still have this like crafting mind, but I can do it on the up and up. I can do it honestly, and I can use that sort of part of my brain that wants to figure out the puzzle and do it in, you know. And I've obviously it's been pretty successful. So
yeah, and what you did with Meow Wolf and is totally 100%. It's like solving a puzzle, like you said. You know, you look at what's missing in life, in any business. Honestly, you look at what's missing in life and what could be solved, and you say like, what can I do? You know, what can I do to put out there and make some money?
Yeah, and you know, like, you know, thinking about George R. R. Martin, the author of Game of Thrones, and just his involvement in it. You know, that was the linchpin. You know, that was the big moment where I was like, well, what if we got George to buy the building?
Yeah, tell me about that, how that kind of came about. Because you were standing in a what was it, a bowling alley, right? Is that what it was? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with George R. R. Martin, and you were like, well, what do you think? How does that even start?
Yeah, so like, you know, we met with a real estate agent, and we walked the building, we walked the bowling alley where we currently reside, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. He's like, yeah, how much money do you guys have to put down on it? And I said, we don't have any money. We're broke. He's like, okay, who do you know that has money that might be able to buy the building? I was like, I know George R. R. Martin, the author of Game of Thrones. He's like, dude, you should reach out to him. You should talk to him about it. So I did. I sent him an email. He got back to me. He knew me from a previous employment at a movie theater that he owns.
Oh, wow.
And so I was a marketing guy for him for a second. So we kind of had a relationship, and he invited me over to his place, and we sat down and we started talking about it. And like within about a half an hour of us talking about it, he said, well, let's go see it. So I jumped in his he had this like little like vintage sports car from like the 70s. And I jumped in his car, just me and George, and we ride over to the bowling alley. And I was texting everybody. I was like, George is going to the bowling alley. He's going to go check out the building. And we get there, and he's walking through, and he sees this like bowling pin sign. It's like a 25 foot tall bowling pin sign that was a relic, and he's obsessed with it. It's out in the parking lot, and he's like obsessed with it. And he's like, so if I buy the building, can we keep the bowling pin sign? I was like, yeah, dude, we can totally do that. But we walked through it, and he was like, wow, this is a pretty awesome space. And it took us 4 months or so to finally close the deal, and it was real rocky. Like it could have not happened for sure, but just kept on pushing and pushing, you know. And
right. So how did you decide that interactive art or experiential? What would you describe it? I guess interactive art, maybe. Is that like a good word? Immersive,
interactive.
Yeah. So how did you decide that like that bowling alley and this time that this was going to be the immersive art experience that you were going to make? Like how did you decide that's the business you were going to get into?
Well, Meow Wolf we had been like working on that together for a while, like over the previous 6 or 7 years, like very informally. We were doing shows in warehouses. They were all temporary. They'd pop up for like a few months, and they're grungy, real grungy, like using almost all recycled materials, stuff we pulled out of dumpsters.
Wow.
And so we were kind of experimenting with this medium, you know, for many years, and successfully too. Like it was like people loved it. And that was the whole thing. I was like, I was tired of putting a show up for like working a few months on a show that's only up for a couple months, and then we have to take it down, and then we have to start all over again. I was like, we need a real business here, you know, and because I wanted us to all get stable and have consistency in our lives. So yeah, you know, Meow Wolf was about to disband we were ready to kind of go our separate ways. And I said, no, let's make one more run at it. Let's like really try to do something big. And that's how the George bowling alley situation came about.
Right. That's super cool. And do you have any like, I guess like any previous artists that inspired you to like work towards this goal?
Yeah. Disneyland,
of course.
Pirates of the Caribbean specifically is like something where when I think about it, it's more than a ride. It's an immersive art experience, and it's abstract and just moody. It has a mood to it. It's not so obvious, and I love that about old Disney rides, especially Pirates, is that it's like, they're not hitting you over the head with like IP from a movie that you just saw a couple years ago, which,
right.
And so it's an art piece. So yeah, definitely, Pirates. I would say that like, I was always into, like James Turrell, Kasama, Team Lab.
Yeah, Kasama's cool. I saw one of her exhibits in Atlanta a couple years ago, and that was one of the things for me that's like even gets close to being Meow Wolf level, where I like walk into a room and I'm like, wow. I've never really been to Disneyland or anything like that, but yeah, the Kasama exhibit, I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Kasama's amazing. I mean, and she's we look up to her. She's very much like a founding artist when it comes to immersive work like this visually. It's like she was almost like social media before there was social media. She was Instagram before there was Instagram.
She was ahead of her time. Yeah.
Sure. And so like we always looked up to Kasama. And yeah, we saw. I would also say people like the Flaming Lips.
Right.
The type of shows that they put on, the live performances that they put on, and the psychedelia involved, and the playfulness of it all. I think was a big part of our influence.
That's cool. So tell me. So you're moving Meow Wolf. It's going to Vegas and also to Denver next year, 2021, and I'm excited. I've been looking a lot about the Vegas one and Omega Mar. That seems like super cool. But just real quick, like why Denver? To expand with such a big building.
Well, for clarity, so Santa Fe is going to stay in Santa Fe.
Right.
Vegas will have a permanent location, and then Denver. So we'll have 3 permanent locations open at the same time. Sometime next year, which is amazing. Why Denver? Gosh, Denver is a remarkable city. Like, this. Denver has this combination of obviously like youthful movement, the psychedelic movement, and a deep appreciation for the outdoors and nature. Also this like deep commitment to social justice and a deep commitment to like fighting for progress, fighting for what's right. And the most prominent of that whole, the most prominent thing that we know about that is like obviously the legalization movement, which when that happened, obviously it changed the country.
Yeah.
And Denver set itself up as a leader in progressive policy. And I think it's still in that moment where there's like this tug of war, and I really hope that out of this tension that exists, especially in a place like Denver, the powers that be, or the systems of capital and the systems of power and structure, can value and empower the cultural movement, and recognize that the cultural movement of Denver, the artists of color, communities of color, communities that are marginalized, disempowered, that actually it's that energy, it's those communities' energy that makes Denver as interesting and valuable as it is. And so like I would really hope that there could be a mutual relationship there, and I think that, in a lot of cities, that fight has already been lost. Like San Francisco, that fight's lost.
Right.
In Texas, for a large part, that fight's lost. Denver, it's like there's still opportunity here to figure out how to do this right.
There is.
And so, I just dig that. I dig that about Denver. And then of course it's always been sort of like our sort of big sister city, like we would always drive up to Denver for shows and, go to the Ogden, go to the Bluebird, and just like, and so we've always had like a close connection to Denver, even just growing up here in New Mexico. So,
yeah. That's
and
cool.
dude, that project is going to be insane. Like, the Denver project is just going to be out of this world.
It already looks insane. Like I drive by it every day and I'm like, what is even going on there? Even just the building shape alone. I'm like, how do you even design a building that's shaped like that? It's just kind of crazy.
So crazy. Yeah. We're super proud of the whole thing. And like the artists that we're working with in Denver, there's 100 plus local artists that we're working with. It's an incredibly diverse group. It's amazing. It's like the momentum that's happening right now for that project is through the roof.
So with the Vegas one, is it all centered around like a mall or like a shopping, like a grocery store of sorts? Because when I was looking at the website and stuff, it is kind of like all themed that way. Is that how it all is, or?
No. So to kind of get some context, and I don't want to break too much.
Okay, I gotcha.
No. I can tell you. But it's basically, like it's similar to the House of Eternal Return, where you have the entry, which is something familiar, and then you have the world beyond.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So Omega Mart is a grocery store that Meow Wolf is partnering on with a company called Dram Corp, and Dram Corp is the owner of Omega Mart, and Dram Corp is like they have some ulterior motives going on with their grocery store. I mean, we're down with it just because it kind of opens experience up to audiences.
Right.
But they're basically like tapping into like this ancient energy that exists that not many people know about. It's like it's centered around like magnetic poles and geographic locations. In Las Vegas, there's like a really big one, and so they kind of tap that source, and then they pump it into their products. And their products are like all kind of weird and twisted and people can connect to them. But we basically are partnering with them, and then they're providing us access to us and audiences access to like where they pull that source material from, where they pull that energy from.
Yeah.
And that's what people get to experience. So they get to kind of go through the entire psychedelic dimension that Dram Corp operates within.
Wow. That's super cool. Yeah, I had no idea about all that. That's super cool.
Yeah, so that's cool.
Let's talk a little bit like just about the future of art, I guess, because we talked a little bit about it in terms of like where movies are going, but I want to know like augmented reality, virtual reality, all that stuff is crazy, video games and how that's going to bleed into what real life is. Like where do you sort of see like virtual reality and augmented reality going, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, virtual reality is like it's cool, but it is a lot to deal with. I have an Oculus Quest that I love. I get into it every now and then, but it's really hard for me to like put it on my face because it's like it feels like a really big commitment.
Yeah,
like it's exhausting, And though it's cool, it's really cool. I think it's kind of an extreme. The future of headset is going to be a blend. You're going to kind of have a slider. And the slider is going to go from like nothing digital to fully digital and everything in between. And so, you'll have like a single pair of glasses or headset that will like allow you to just live normal life if you don't want any digital information at all. Or you can have like, minimal digital notifications. You can have like animated digital content, or you can be fully immersed in the digital world and decide where you want to be at any given time. And where I think the sweet spot's going to be for most people is in this like animated world, augmented world, and where you're walking through your normal life, but then there's going to be augmented components layered on top and anchored to space. Not many people have gotten the opportunity to wear a Magic Leap headset or wear a HoloLens headset. Like less than 1% probably of the population. They are phenomenal. They're phenomenal.
You've tried one?
Yeah.
That's like the stuff you're talking about where like augments the reality and like puts like an overlay in front of your view.
Yeah. They're basically headsets that like you see the normal world as you always would, but then it starts to put digital content out onto the world, and the digital content's aware of the physical world. That's what's amazing about it, is like the digital content, like you have a little robot in your living room, and that robot will know where the coffee table is and can climb up onto the coffee table. Like the digital content's aware of the world because the headset's mapping the real world for the digital content to know about it. So it's incredible. It's incredible. And like, it's early, but like the HoloLens 2 and, some of the future iterations of the Magic Leap headset, they're incredible. And then everybody's kind of waiting for Apple, like what's Apple going to do? Apple's going to create a headset that pairs with the phone, and it's going to be really slick, and it's going to be really user friendly. And that will start to change the game for people, because I don't know how many, have you used many like augmented reality apps on your phone?
Not really. I mean, I use Amazon to like, see how like a couch will look in my living room and like stuff like that,
So the AR kit inside of an iPhone, like the software, it is doing a lot of really insane work, especially with the new LiDAR scanning. Basically, you can scan a room or scan any object like immediately, which is incredible.
Wow.
And what it's all setting up for is the paradigm shift of when it becomes glasses, because walking around with your phone, like you only get this tiny little window, and it's not very effective. But the moment that it becomes a headset, it changes everything. Like you are now actually just watching this world. You're not, you're actually experiencing. You're not just watching it through a little tiny screen, And so, I mean, I think that the future of the world is, or the future of the physical world is a integration of the internet with the physical world.
So do you think that'll like impact like art in any significant way? Because we're already talking about experiential and like interactive art. So what's going to happen when you like are looking at a painting and you have these like HoloLenses on, and the different the colors can change in accordance to what colors you like? Like, is that something?
Well, I mean, what really happens is that the world becomes the canvas. Mm-hmm. And that's where like, you can basically create a 24/7 artistic environment for people to exist within, even outside, in a grocery store, in any sort of boring space like a DMV. All of these become canvases for people's creativity to be showcased, and for one's own creativity to be showcased.
So so follow me along this. So you could buy like augmented glasses or something, and you could buy like a desk pack from some dude on Fiverr or something, and suddenly all of the desks in your world look like the desks that this guy designed online. like that, something along those lines. Is that what you're saying?
Cool. Yeah, you're most likely what will happen is that you'll have a headset, and it doesn't matter which headset you have. Your headset will pair with either a phone in your pocket, or it will start to actually just pair with what is called the AR cloud, or cloud computing. Mm-hmm. And so then the headset you'll have the ability to then download apps just like you could from any app store currently. And those apps will be kind of like, packs, or like so you could download like the Google Maps. So you could open the Google Maps app. Right. And now the Google Maps app's going to open up, and it's going to give you all of this wayfinding information. It's going to give you like streets and names and all this shit that you need in order to get around. And that will be displayed in real life on the physical space in front of you through the headset. And then, you'll probably run multiple apps at the same time in something like this. And the type of app that excites me is like, when you have like a social platform for sharing digital art, sharing kind of a layer of creativity in the world. And, that's kind of like something that I would love to work on and hope to be able to work on in the future, is sort of like the experience application that allows creatives to share their work with each other in space.
Yeah. Like an open platform kind of a thing.
Yeah. That's super platform.
Cool. Yeah.
Totally.
So I guess the other part in terms of like future and art is artificial intelligence, because I know you've probably read these, like the scripts made by AI online and stuff, and like paintings made by AI. There's even songs, albums made by artificial intelligence. Like, how do you feel about that stuff?
Oh, I mean, so like, my take on it all is that, like, consciousness has wanted to express itself since the beginning of time, and that humans are not the exclusive vehicle for consciousness, and humans are not the exclusive vehicle for creativity. To me, we are servicing and have been servicing since the beginning of time the creator and the creative, and so we are only vessels of the creative.
Right.
So, like, through AI or through any other form where the creative gets expressed, that's what it's been. That's always what it's always been about, anyway. So, like, I'm all about artificial intelligence being the creative, because I want to see more and more creativity in the world.
Yeah, because art's about the experience. It's about the end, not the means, I guess. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, but also even the means in that situation, it's like we've now created. We are now in the process of creating an even stronger vehicle, a faster, more efficient, more proficient, like, vehicle for creativity. And
true.
That's kind of our service. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be tapping into the creator inside of all of us, and we're supposed to be, like, expressing our imagination. So, like, if we get robots or we get artificial intelligence to express imagination, then that's amazing. Because then long after humans live on, we will still have creativity in the world or in the universe, And I think so. That's the position I come from at it,
That's super cool. That's a really cool way to think about it too. Kind of, yeah, it was different than what I thought you were going to say too, because it's like, us artists, we gotta we gotta stay there and making art, and you wouldn't think that, like, robots could be creative or artificial intelligence could be creative, but you're right. It is totally just another output for creativity, even because humans made the machines, human made the computer, Yeah.
Something that's interesting to consider is, like, I talk about this often, is, like, go back 50,000 years ago and ask yourself, like, back then, how many things were being created from the imagination? And very little. It's like you'd have, like, probably some living situations, some drawings on a cave, and maybe there's some, and then track it over time, from like 50,000 years ago until today, and how many things are being created from our imagination, right. and then see where it is today, and, like, look around, like, everything in my room or in my house, everything that you're surrounded with, all have been created from the imagination. So we're on this hyper trajectory of venturing into the imagination, of pulling from that realm and making it real. And I think that, like, once AI starts to do that, we are now fully transitioning into an imaginative realm. Like, we are going to humans, and humans are going to live in a purely imaginative world. Whether it's because of the headsets we're wearing, or because of the robots, or because of the fake media on the social media, or whatever, it's like, this is quickly going from real to imaginary.
Yeah, it's true. Even like you were saying, like, the whole facts on social media and stuff, like, what is real? What is facts? That's that whole idea of truth is even becoming imaginary at this point.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's scary. It's scary to a lot of people. Like, we're in a weird transition point where losing reality feels really scary. But every paradigm shift that consciousness has gone through, I imagine, to those going through that paradigm shift, it's felt really scary.
Right.
The emergence of language, the emergence of spoken language, probably felt really scary, because we were trying to talk with our words, but then we couldn't really talk, and, like, one person's talking more than another, and there was probably this whole period of time where, like, what are we doing trying to talk with our mouths like this? Like, is it, but over time, then we actually made a full circle. But, I think we're just kind of in the throes of this paradigm shift right now, and it feels really nerve-wracking,
So would you subscribe to sort of that idea that this is a simulation that we're currently living in and that we're just sort of on this like constant loop of simulating what our lives are?
I would prescribe to there being some kind of like simulation component going on. Yeah, for sure. And not obviously knowing who's behind it or what's, but I also know that we're behind it. Like, exactly. Or we being the consciousness is behind it, because like we are ultimately processing, like the simulation is my brain simulation. Like there's a processing happening here that, that does take into account the imagination. And even like the way that we put together time, like we structure time in a linear sequence from past, present, future. That's a construct that we create for the sake of
experience,
experience and logic.
Yeah.
Well,
same with color, right? Same with color. Color doesn't exist. It exists
totally.
Purely in our experience, in our brain.
Right. When you do, I don't know if have you ever heard of Bufo Alvarez?
No.
5-MeO-DMT. There's a toad. There's a frog called the Colorado River toad,
really?
And it's kind of our region a bit, like southern New Mexico, Arizona, Mexico, and it has a venom that is insanely psychedelic. It's the most psychedelic substance on the planet.
Wow.
And I've had the opportunity to experience it with a guide and a shaman in a very therapeutic setting.
Right.
And it, you smoke the venom, and Mike Tyson is really big on 5-MeO-DMT. But you smoke this venom, and like you really do experience the deconstruction of the simulation, of the systems, and you realize who or what is at the core of the simulation. And it's a singular thing. It's not me looking at this thing. It's me as a part of this thing.
Right.
It's a singular entity that is at the core of the simulation, if that makes sense. And you experience it. It's pretty mind-boggling.
Right. I have some experience with DMT. I imagine it's probably what you're describing is a little crazier, right? A little more impactful.
It's more intense, like than like what people would consider kind of a standard DMT.
Right.
It only lasts 15 minutes. The experience I'm talking about, and like not as visual or as fractal as normal DMT. It kind of takes you directly to a white light, like directly to like one, unification or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a remarkable experience. It really is.
Right.
But it shakes the foundation of like all that we know is real, and it completely kind of like, I don't know, compromises the structure of reality.
Yeah.
For people.
Well, yeah, it's hard to go back to your office job after that, Well,
yeah, you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
It could be hard to go back to the office job, or it could also be, you can also have an appreciation for this simulation that we get to experience, and like now taking it one day at a time in the sense of like, we're only here for a certain amount of time, and this window is my window, and I know it's not all that exists. It's just what I've got today, and so I'm gonna fucking enjoy it as much as I can. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what it's done for me. It's helped.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Psychedelics in general, I would recommend a certain type of person takes them if they feel very closed off and you don't really have an open mind. I would recommend taking psychedelics. I think it really opens up creativity in a lot of ways. But getting past that a little bit, I did want to ask you about spatial activations, because I've been reading about it on your like LinkedIn and your Facebook. It looks pretty cool. Could you kind of explain what that is?
Yeah, so I have the opportunity to move into a consulting arrangement with Meow Wolf.
Yeah,
I'm still on the board of directors at Meow Wolf, and obviously will always be a founder. But I'm also now a consultant to the board, and that allowed me the freedom to then actually create a consulting agency and think about, in my mind, like, where would I want to go with that? What's my thesis behind consulting, and what do I think the world needs right now? And where I've landed with that is that, like, basically we were already on this path of like the digital world overtaking the physical. Like people would much rather be on their iPhones or on their computer than go out to a shopping mall, for instance. And that the physical world was like already starting to have a hard time attracting people and having a hard time like just keeping up with interesting content. There's like way more interesting content on the computers than there is in the real world. And but then COVID hit, and COVID like drew like it basically like put the nail in the coffin for the physical commercial world.
Yeah.
All the things that were on its way out now are definitely on their way out, like movie theaters and just your standard like retail shops, cheesy, like, you know, copy pasted restaurant concepts like, you know, Chili's or Applebee's. Like all of this shit was like, they're all relics of the 90s. And now because of COVID, like a lot of these things are just completely done. Yeah. COVID's the excuse for all of them to kind of get out of their leases.
It's the fast forward button, you know? It's like, well, all of this would have happened 20-ish years down the road. It's just going to happen now.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. And so now you have the commercial development world, which is also, you know, the commercial development world in America is the social fabric of America. Like that's where people go to do stuff. Yep. And that whole world is decimated and they don't have solutions. They've been essentially resting on their laurels for like the last 30 years and leasing space to the same people over and over again, essentially. And that system's now totally broken. So what developers have to start thinking, have to start asking themselves is how do we bring people back? What's going to draw them? And I'm a firm believer that it's imaginative, creative, mind-blowing experiences that are going to do that. Experiences that are connected to humans, experiences that bring people together, that's human-centered, that's about what people want. And it's about community. It's about like, who is it in your community that you're designing this for? And so I'm coming at it from an angle of being like, I'm going to bring together people who know how to make spaces interesting, whether it's through art, creativity, events, technology, parties, you know, temporary activations, pop-up food, pop-up theater, you know, community gatherings, community engagements, whatever, political rallies, people who know how to make spaces active and bringing them together as like the group that can help developers solve for their issues right now.
That's super cool. It kind of goes back. Oh, go ahead.
I'd say at the end of the day, make a world that's cooler for everybody to live in. You know?
No, I agree. So, I was just gonna say it's cool how like, so at the beginning of Meow Wolf, you were like, we need to get a solid place to put our art in. You know, we can't just keep moving around to different places. But now you're sort of grown to a way where we have the centered spaces, but you need to sort of grow that idea so you can move it around now. So it's almost like you're going back to one in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, you know, when Meow Wolf got successful, we asked ourselves, like, why did this work? Why are people so into this? Like, we knew that like the burners would come. We knew that like kind of like art freaks would come. It's like, it's the mom and dad from the middle of nowhere, Kansas,
right,
that is driving to Santa Fe to take their kids, you know, and they're probably Trump supporters, and that's fine. Like they're taking their kids to Meow Wolf in Santa Fe. And like, so what nerve did it strike, you know? And at the end of the day, what it is like, it's not Meow Wolf, it's imagination. That's what they're psyched about. They want to experience something that's imaginative. And so like, that's not a proprietary thing. Exactly. You know, Meow Wolf's not the only imaginative group in the world.
It sure seems like it though. Like it sure seems like all these malls and restaurants really do lack imagination though. Like what's going on with that?
It's crazy because the world that malls and restaurants and that whole development world where they come from is construction, finance, like a stodgy design, efficiency. So like a lot of these places are coming from a mindset of efficiency. Like what's going to be the most efficient and cost effective? And like imagination isn't the most efficient of things, you know, like imagination is going to go off the rails. That's the point of it. And so it's that whole world, and you strike you hit it the exact kind of like, conundrum, which is that the entire industry of commercial development, the investors that invest in it, the designers that design it, the contractors that construct it, the owners have to open themselves up to the wild, the other, the imaginative, the off the rail, the crazy. And because that's what people want. And people get that shit all the time from their video games, from their Instagram feeds, from their Facebook feeds, from their phones, from their computers, from their YouTube channels. They get off the wall all the time. So now, like, consumers want off the wall, crazy, wild, out in the real world. And developers got to ask themselves, are they willing to get crazy with it? Because that's what it's going to take.
You have to at this point. Because you think of it like online, like a website can change like that. Website, get your developer on there a week and you make, it looks completely different. But a brick and mortar store, it's hard to make changes and it's a lot slower. So, I mean, it's hard to compete.
It is. It's hard to compete. And you got to shift shift what's the primary reason space exists? It's not to sell stuff.
Right.
The primary reason that space exists is to experience things, and we'll figure out a way to sell stuff in the process. But let's think about people experiencing things that inspires them, and like use that as the heart of the design quality, and then kind of branch out from there.
Yeah.
So it's a generational shift that's happening. And, the alternative is that these spaces turn into warehouse distribution centers for Amazon.
That'd be the saddest thing in the world.
Totally. Because like we're basically going to be like surrendering our social spaces to the internet in this way. It's like, really sad. But yeah, we'll see. It's gonna take private equity, venture capital, large amounts of debt financing, developers that are willing to take risks, accelerators that are focused on location-based experiences. It's going to take a lot of work to like raise the industry of location-based, but I'm a pretty big believer that consumers want it. That like the digital age is, it's saturated. The digital world is saturated. Yeah. The internet's very saturated, and that the physical world has almost no content to it. So people will, and you see this, people will stand in line at that freaking ice cream shop in Denver.
Yeah, like, Little Man's.
Yeah.
Little Man's ice cream, yeah.
Just because it's a cool looking ice cream shop, you know, like it looks different than the rest. And we just need more courage like that.
No, 100%. The ones who risk and the ones who have courage are going to be the ones who are here 20 years down the road, you know? Let's go along that loophole. So malls, right? I mean, basically have looked the exact same since their inception. Do you guys do you have any way of to like redesign malls or like shopping areas that you think will kind of bring and breathe new life into it? Are you working on something like that?
Well, yeah, I think there's a combination of things that can happen. So, you know, you have one element of a mall is the common space, is like the shared common space, oftentimes called the spine. And, you know, the developer that we work with in Las Vegas, Area 15, they've really done an incredible job with thinking about what a mall could look like in the future or in the present.
Right.
And the shared space, you know, really needs to be able to have a feeling of like, it has to have an interesting and fun communal vibe. I think it needs to have plenty of things that people can take pictures of and moments of surprise and delight that within this common space, people can like, you know, they can film a 15-second, you know, video of a performer doing some cool aerial act or something, and then post it to social media. And people like, you know, people in like suburban Nebraska are like, whoa, holy shit, what was that? You know? And then so the common space really just needs to be considered like more of a communal entertainment space.
Yeah. So when I think of like a communal mall space now, I think of like that area that usually has like a play center for kids or something, and maybe like a Starbucks or something, and then a couple seats. That's usually what I think of when I think of like a communal mall space. But you're thinking of like some Circus du Soleil kind of stuff where you have
totally. I would say like, you know, probably a good model to think about like what a mall could be And a lot of people laugh because it's like, I don't know. It's, a lot of people don't really like shopping malls to begin with, but looking at the festival, the kind of the way that festivals operate, with like multidisciplinary creative expression happening kind of at any given time, while also there being like shops and things that you can buy stuff at, and obviously wouldn't like create an entire like festival mall, although
that might be cool.
Yeah,
I would go. I would go.
Just thinking like from a perspective of like a programming mix perspective. So the common space is one area. Then you have like, who are the tenants that you're renting to? And there's a bunch of tenants out there that have really cool, interesting concepts, but haven't had anyone take a risk on them yet. Immersive art, immersive theater, play spaces, large like multi-generational play spaces. I think like restaurants that are showcasing a different type of like local authentic cuisine, stuff that just feels edgier, stuff that feels less clear channel, and has real personality, has some real grit to it, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, because why go to a mall when you could just go to Amazon, right? That's basically what everyone's at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Or like order your food from Uber Eats or whatever. Like, what makes me want to go out and eat?
Right.
I'm in warm weather areas, I'm a big believer in rooftop activation and just people wanting to move. So like, obviously like the four wall, what are people actually spending money on needs to be way more interesting. It needs to be way more experiential. And then you have another component, which is ongoing programming. So it's like throwing parties, having events, putting together temporary pop-up installations or pop-up food or pop-up, shops. Like just that feeling of like it's always evolving and something's always happening.
Is that why the Meow Wolves have like a venue or a music venue of some sort? You like to be able to hold events there?
For sure. Yeah, that ongoing programming is really important. It's kind of like the beating heart of a system. It's like there's always something happening. It keeps on going, and that energy keeps pumping. So that's important. Malls don't do that. Like malls don't spend money on like ongoing programming.
Maybe they might have Christmas. They'll have like an ice rink or something. Yeah,
they have Santa show up exactly, or for Halloween. But no, it's got to be like year round. And then I would say that these large spaces, these large big box stores and large volumetric spaces are actually could be really incredible spaces for augmented and virtual reality.
True.
The best kind of virtual reality is stuff that's anchored to actual space. Like, and so to be able to create virtual and augmented experiences that are within an actual space, I think that there's still a huge opportunity for that. Sadly, like the Void went under, and I think it was a little ahead of its time. And
what was the Void?
You don't know the Void? Okay,
I've heard of the movie.
The Void is a company, is a VR company that did this really cool location-based VR experience. They were invested in heavily by Disney.
Okay.
They used Disney IP. They used Star Wars and Avengers and stuff, and I think shot themselves in the foot a little bit with that because they're paying a lot of royalties to it. But it was cool. It was an awesome experience. It was it just got decimated by COVID.
Right.
And so, but I do think that like even it was kind of small scale. I think that even larger scale multi-person VR experiences within gigantic big box stores could be hella fun.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think like there's going to probably be like a lot of sports and recreation inside of future malls. Like I went to a mall in Dallas that has a whole community rec center, like replaced the Dillards. Huh. And so it's like basketball courts and soccer fields, indoor soccer fields, and like and people are there. They're using it as a community space, and I love that. It's just like,
genius.
What does the community want? Yeah.
Yeah, it's important, like you're saying, recognize when, like at malls, you lost the Dillards. What are you going to do? Put in what people need in your community. That's a really good thing to remember. Yeah.
Yeah, it's human-centered design. It's community-centered design. It's asking yourself, what does the community want, and then going from there. What does the human want, and then going from there.
Right.
Well,
I guess, do you have any advice to give to people? Because I'm 23, I'm pretty young, and that's what most of the people who watch my podcast, they're my age, went to school with in the Denver area, I guess. And you never even went to college, right?
I didn't go to college. No.
So what would you give advice to people about? I mean, because they would look at you and just say, "Wow, like that's the path my mom said not to go down, but you're having tremendous success."
Yeah, I mean, I think probably for most people, college is the right decision, And for a while there, when I was like 32 years old and working at a restaurant, bussing tables, making $50 a night, like I was definitely asking myself, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And I wish I would have gone to college. So but whether you go to college or not, I mean, I think and you're interested in business, or you're interested in sort of like connecting the dots between what the world needs and what you can provide. It's really important to stage out your thinking into what I think of as 4 distinct stages. One is vision. The next stage is resources or finances. Then the stage after that's capacity. And then the stage after capacity is delivery. And what happens for people often is they start to have an idea, and then they don't let themselves actually craft the idea, like craft the vision, because they start worrying about the finances, and they start worrying about the capacity, and they start worrying about who's going to, the delivery of it.
Right.
And they basically talk themselves out of even envisioning, And so I think really important to, when you have an idea that you really feel like that could resonate and could work, like there's something there, to let yourself really envision it. Like take it through an entire vision process, like draw it out, bring other people in, have conversations about it, get it down on paper, crunch the numbers, like how many people would have to come in, how much money would we have to make, how expensive might it be, to envision the whole thing. And don't let yourself get paralyzed by questions like, where is the money going to come from? Right. Or who's going to build it? Because what happens is, if you have a really good vision, the money will come. And if you have the money, the capacity then shows up. The people who are going to build the thing will show up because you have money to pay them. And if you have the people who can build it, then it's going to get delivered. It's going to happen. So you kind of really have to take it one step at a time. And I'd say that's the biggest lesson that I learned through my process, is anything is possible. Anything we envision is definitely possible, as long as you don't get in your own way. As long as you don't convince yourself that you can't do it. You've got to be patient and let yourself move through those stages organically.
Yeah, manifest it. If you envision, because if you can't envision it, who else will? If you don't believe in yourself, who else will?
Totally. Yeah, you got to envision it and believe in it, and then kind of take it one step at a time after that.
Right.
But there's going to be a world of opportunity. Creative minds, artistic minds, innovative minds are going to have tens of millions of square feet out in the world to do stuff with. And I think embracing that and knowing that today is the time to really come up with those concepts, to come up with those visions, and maybe within the next 5 years, hopefully a whole new wave of cool shit starts getting funded and starts getting built, because the world needs it. People need it.
Yeah, we do. I like cool shit. I love cool shit. Cool shit. Love looking at it too. Yeah. Oh, love experiencing it.
Yeah, let's put stuff out in the world that inspires others to think that things can be different than the way they are, because we need kids and we need, new generations to be inspired that we can make impact, and when we walk around copy pasted suburban developments, it doesn't look like we can make a change because everything looks like prescribed and predictable. So we need to be able to feel that that something else is possible, right?
Yeah.
And we need to do that because we need to fucking save our planet, because we need to actually make the changes to save our planet.
I was going to say, we have one of the biggest problems facing humanity of all time in terms of global warming, and so if we can, so I like what you're saying is that creativity shows people that more than what reality is possible. So when you look at the larger problems ahead, it shows we don't just have to accept that as reality. We can change things. That's really cool.
Exactly. We can envision what the world could be and not get ourselves compromised by, oh my God, how are we going to get there? Or, oh my God, who's going to do it? We can envision what it's going to be, and then we can start really moving towards that, But yeah, so that's really at the core of everything that I'm about personally, is just like inspiring possibility, and using, creativity, imagination. That's what it does.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're pretty much good. I appreciate it, Vince. Thank you so much again for talking with me. You're awesome.
Sure.
I hope sometime, I'll definitely be at the opening for Denver's Meow Wolf, but I hope sometime you could stop by the office. I'd be down to come meet you if you're in Denver anytime. You're a good person, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Vince.